About today, we're going to discuss DUIs with you, potential ramifications, things that you should and shouldn't do. Now, every case is different, so the information we're providing today is really just for that purpose. It's just informational in nature. If you want to have a consultation with us and we could talk to you a little bit more about your specific case and the details of your case, happy to do so. But again, this isn't intended necessarily to be legal advice, but just informational in purpose.
Okay, so here's what we're going to do too. I'm going to let people call in if it's okay with you to get that free consultation. Our number here is 602-277-5369 and toll free it's 1-866-536-1100. Here it's Friday, guys. It's Friday and we all know it's hot out. You're going for a drink, right? You're going for a drink right now. We know we're thinking about it. Write the number down and put it into your phone because God forbid something happens. You've got that phone number and it's in your phone just because you heard it on Networking Arizona. So here we go. It's real easy. It's 480-FH-LAWYER. So that's 480-626-7070. Their website is fountainhillslawfirm.com. They do free consultations. Okay. So I got to ask a couple of questions, okay? If I have been drinking, what do I do if I'm pulled over? I mean, do you get out of the car? Do we not get out of the car? What do we do?
Well, what you're going to do is you're going to stay in the car and you're going to follow the officer's directions. You certainly don't want to take any actions that he could or she could perceive as aggressive in nature. So you're going to want to stay in the car, have your hands still on the steering wheel, I would say, at 10 and 2, because typically if you're pulled over, it's going to be probably after 10 p.m., if not later. The officer should approach and ask you if for license, registration information. You should provide that and cooperate. Now, if the officer suspects that you've been drinking or you've had any alcohol, or in fact, if you're out after 10 o'clock, I think it's going to be a standard question. Have you been drinking tonight?
It's the first thing they ask.
Exactly. In a situation such as that, if you have been drinking and you shouldn't have been driving, my advice at that point would be just to tell the officer you're happy to provide the information that you're obligated to provide, that's your license, your registration, and insurance, and that you don't want to answer any questions at that point.
And that's when you start dialing your number.
Absolutely. If the officer gets you out of the car and he begins attempting to administer some sobriety tests or roadside coordination tests, as we like to call them, you're being investigated for DUI. And frankly, you don't want to do those tests. So if you get any indication that the officer is going to be doing a DUI investigation, you want to ask for an attorney immediately.
Right. Can you do that when they ask you? Can you say, you know what, I refuse to answer that, sir. I would like to call my attorney.
Absolutely. You have every right to speak with your attorney at any time. Yes.
The number is, put it in your phone. It is 480-FH-LAWYER, which is 480-626-7070. They do free consultations, and you can check them out at fountainhillslawfirm.com. All right, so do they do the roadside test? What do they do?
Well, Carol, that's one of the most frequently asked questions that Tate and I get as DUI defense attorneys as far as the roadside tests are concerned. During if someone finds themselves in a DUI investigation, most people think that they're pass-fail tests when really they're not. The better word, the term roadside test or field sobriety test is a bit misleading, as the better term would be exercises, because these law enforcement officers, are not looking whether you pass or fail a test. They're looking for clues that they can check off on their DUI worksheets. Essentially, the exercises are related to blood alcohol levels and trying to give an officer an assessment on whether or not they're going to make an arrest. And the short answer to that is no, don't do the field sobriety test.
It. I don't care if you're drunk or not. You're going to fail it,
well,
right?
That's exactly right, Carol.
Okay.
Essentially, what it does is it helps a law enforcement officer and later on, eventually, the prosecutor build its case against you.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think that it's a scary thing out there because especially right now, it's a great time also that you're coming on, especially with what's going on. And, of course, with all of the cops and that are doing what they've been doing and things like that, it's a sensitive situation, Tate.
Absolutely is. And, we have a lot of respect for law enforcement officers and the job that they have to do. We see our clients, of course, not in their worst, as an officer may at 2 a.m. if our clients had too much to drink. So right. We certainly sympathize and understand the officer's job. But, our information or advice here today is, what do you do if you're in that situation, if you're on the
Right. And
wrong side of
everybody
the
knows
law?
when you've been drinking, you're not yourself, and you usually act much worse than you ever would. So again, we want you to have this number in your phone. It's 480FHLawyer.com. And again, I'll just say it out for you, 480-626-7070, fountainhillslawfirm.com. They do free consultations. So, okay, let's go into this before we go to a break here, too. Should I do the breathalyzer test or the blood test?
In that situation, Carol, and I want to be clear about what we're talking about, because there's a roadside, what's called a portable breath test that the officer may give you. It's a little handheld device, and it's a tool that they use to, one, determine what your blood alcohol level is, and if you're under the influence of alcohol, if it's something else, if they want to confirm what it may be. The one on the side of the road, the little handheld device, you don't have to do. So I'd refuse that one as well. The breath or blood test back at the station, or where the officer wants to draw your blood, or he's putting you next to what's called an Intoxilizer 8000. You want to do that test in most cases. Again, as I said earlier, each case is a little bit different, but in most instances, you're going to want to do that test. In Arizona, there's a implied consent law that says that if you operate a motor vehicle on the roadway, you impliedly consent to a test of your breath and blood if an officer has a probable cause to believe that you're DUI. So if you don't do it, and it's later upheld in an MVD hearing, you could lose your license for a year just for the refusal alone.
Right. You got to be careful. We're going to go to a break. When we come back, we want to talk further about some of the different things. These are just informational for you guys out there for what not to do tonight when you go out for a drink, right? And a lot of people driving still. They're still driving. We all know they are. Otherwise, they wouldn't be getting popped, right?
Absolutely.
And again, it's not just drinking. There's a lot of other things. You could be taking medication and get popped. You're doing medical marijuana now. There's a lot of different other things that people are doing that are getting themselves in trouble. I also want to say this, too. There's a lot of listeners out there. This can happen to anybody at any time. You could be, I know of a woman that was 80 years old that had a little luncheon. She went to a luncheon and had a glass of wine. She probably wasn't even that drunk, but considered impaired. And so, of course, she got popped for $10,000 now, whatever it was, whatever. I don't even know. It was in California. But here's the other thing I want to also say, too. There's a lot of parents out there that are listening. You're the ones that are paying for it. So do me a favor. Give them a call. The number is 480-FH-LAWYER. That's 480-626-7070. I think everybody should have that number in their phones. Check them out. They do free consultations. Their website is fountainhillslawfirm.com. So welcome back, everyone. We're talking with Tate Elke, owner of Fountain Hills Law Firm, and he has with him Tyler Allen, who is also an attorney with them. We've been talking a little bit about DUI, and we're going to continue about that because it's Friday night and everybody's going to go out and have a drink right now. We do want you to put that number in your phone, which is 480-FH-LAWYER. And then, of course, you can check them out on their website, which is fountainhillslawfirm.com. They do free consultations, so give them a call. If you're in that situation, that's the number to call. Okay, so, Tyler, what are the potential penalties then for DUI conviction?
Right. And Carol, as far as the potential penalties, you talked about this before the break, about DUIs. People come in to you say DUIs cost $1 gazillion. And that's, pretty close to accurate. DUIs are very expensive, whether it be your first, a first regular DUI offense or a up to a aggravated DUI, which is a felony conviction. Fines are one of the number one questions Tate and I get. There are substantial fines as far as penalties, state mandatory assessments, every DUI, including a first, and this gets people all the time as well, do I really have to go to jail for a first DUI offense? And the answer is yes. The mandatory minimums in Arizona for a first regular DUI offense would be 10 days of jail. However, 9 days of which could be suspended upon successful completion of alcohol counseling. That leaves you with 1 day. People would still have to do the 1 day of jail. Now, counseling, that's required by state law and here in Arizona as well. There's also other collateral consequences for immigration. Different things come up. And then also one of the big things, Tate, that we always talk about is the MVD consequences, such as the requirement of the ignition interlock device for all DUI offenses, suspension, traffic survival school, among others.
So you're saying that all DUIs, in other words, one time you get in trouble, yourself in trouble, you have to purchase that for your car?
It's the breathalyzer. People, shorthand ignition interlock device. Shorthand is breathalyzer for your vehicle.
So no matter what, I mean, there's a lot of different penalties. Each one of these things that you're talking about, the person who's gotten the DUI has to pay for that.
That is correct.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely.
What else?
I mean, it really depends on the type of charges, the type of offenses that someone's accused of due to their blood alcohol level, or if it's DUI drugs, there's other considerations as well.
So you do these free consultations when somebody, let's say somebody, and I'm just going to do this off the cuff for a second, okay, if that's okay with you, because I'm so very comfortable with that.
Absolutely. We were waiting for the curveball.
Were you? Okay, good. I just want to know what people should expect. Let's say, somebody has gotten themselves in trouble. There is life after DUI. The best thing to do, why should you do it you shouldn't even try and think they could do it on their own, right? I mean, why call an attorney? You got to.
Yeah, absolutely. An attorney is going to be able to tell you what the strengths and weaknesses of your case and be able to spot issues as far as the case. A lot of times people think, well, they got me, they got me dead to rights. There's no issues in this case. And an attorney that's experienced as we are in that area and handles hundreds and hundreds of DUI cases, we're going to be able to tell them about, well, no, this is actually an issue, or this is an issue. And also, if they get extended some kind of a plea offer, which in most cases prosecutors will do, we're going to be able to tell them if it's a good plea offer, if they can do better.
Well, that's the other thing, too, is if somebody has gotten popped, I call it popped, you certainly, that's what you're there for. You're there to help them reduce what it is and you can't, nobody else knows better than someone like you. How long have you been doing this?
I've been doing it about 14 years.
14 years, so you certainly got a lot of experience under your belt. Okay, so Tate, what about jail? Have I work and if I have it, what happens if I have work and a family? What happens with that?
Well, that's a question that we get asked often. If you're dealing with a first offense where you're doing a day in jail, it's less of a consideration. If you have to go to jail, the courts are very flexible with that. You could do it on a weekend, you can do it on a holiday. The jail is always open, so you won't have a problem finding a time that's convenient for you if you got to take time off from work or whatnot. Now, if you're doing a longer period of time, let's say 30 days is your sentence. In most jurisdictions, there's a certain period of jail that you would have to serve. Now, you can get out for work release, which is typically 12 hours a day, up to 6 days a week. And in many jurisdictions, they have home detention. After you've served a certain percentage of your jail time, it can convert to home detention, where you have a monitor and your house essentially operates as the jail. Again, you can leave your home for work or school, but then you've got to be back at certain times, and that will also satisfy the jail requirement.
Well, I'll tell you something, guys. This is something that it happens a lot here, especially here in Arizona. It's a zero tolerance, right?
It basically is. My advice whenever somebody asks me if we're sitting around, it's usually over a cocktail as well. Well, what happens? What do I do if I say, well, don't drink and drive to begin with. Don't even have a beer. Don't even have, a cocktail
right.
and
Call
drive.
Uber.
Yeah, because, in my experience, in most cases, people that get DUIs, it's just a product of poor planning. They went out for a luncheon, like the friend of yours in California you mentioned. They have one too many glasses of wine. They haven't made arrangements to get home, and they figure, well, I'll just get my car home. Or if they've gone out with friends, one drink turns into 5 drinks, and they got to be at work the next day, or they
think they
time.
can.
Yeah, and frankly, people that have been drinking don't make the best decisions either.
Right.
You kind of cross that threshold.
It's a short way home. Oh, I'll just get over it. And usually that's when it happens, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're leaving a bar or a restaurant at 1 a.m, you could rest assured that there's a police officer in the area. They're looking for you. And many officers do stake out bars, and there's nothing illegal about that. They watch bars and they wait for people to leave that may be impaired, which, it makes sense.
Now, the number to call is 480-FH-LAWYER. Put it in your phone. If it's someone that you know, please tell them about this. This is what this show is all about, because it's networking. And that's what the networking is all about. It may not be you, but it certainly may be someone you know, someone in your family, a loved one. We all certainly know someone who's gotten a DUI. It just happens a lot here. You can check them out on their website, which is Fountain Hills Lawfirm.com, and they do free consultations. And so you can also call them at 480 FH Law Firm. And
FH Lawyer.
I said it wrong, okay? See, I got mixed up. So 480 FH Lawyer is what it is. And so the other thing I wanted to say, too, please, those people out there, those mom and dads out there that are paying for this is why you need a consultation. They do a consultation. Find out what your rights are. Find out where you stand. Okay, so let me ask you something, Tyler.
Sure.
What about marijuana card holders? How do the DUI laws impact them?
Carol, the law in Arizona related to marijuana as it relates to DUI offenses just seems to be constantly changing. The short answer to, I guess, that question is, can someone be convicted of a DUI charge with just having THC or marijuana in their system? And the short answer is yes. Even if someone does have a state issued marijuana card, people are still. Tate and I represent quite a few people that have medical marijuana cards that are active and are still getting arrested for DUI offenses. As I stated, the law is ever changing here in Arizona. The card can potentially be admissible in court at a trial as far as evidence is concerned as an affirmative defense, meaning we can bring that in, present it to the jury, and say, look, he or she had this medical marijuana card and was lawfully able to possess and use marijuana at the time. However, the caveat to that is that it's on the person accused that has to show, they have the burden of showing that the concentration of THC or marijuana in their system is insufficient to cause impairment. So the line the courts in Arizona have drawn is a very gray
How can they
one.
figure that out? I mean, I was in such pain. I was driving and I was in such pain. I needed to take a toke.
Well, again, goes back to what Tate and I were talking about earlier as far as roadside tests, drug recognition evaluations, that sort of thing that come into play in a law enforcement officer's investigation. All that stuff they can use against an accused to try to prove up impairment.
Which is why you want to do less, or do, just the minimum as far as provide your license, your insurance, your registration, not do any roadside tests. The officers may say, okay, I want to check your eyes. That's a horizontal gaze nystagmus test. That's another test. And sometimes the officers, and they can employ trickery, they can say, well, if you do these tests, infer that if you're okay, you're going to be able to go home. But if you've had a few drinks, you shouldn't have, or a drink, you shouldn't do those tests at all.
So best advice regarding DUI real quickly.
Well, if you drink, don't drive. If you drive, don't drink. And, if you do get pulled over for a DUI, ask to speak with an attorney immediately. Again, the officer may attempt to get you to do some tests. Don't do the test. Do the breath or blood test, generally speaking. You should be given an opportunity to speak with a lawyer before doing the breath or blood test that we talked about earlier. But, definitely talk to a lawyer as quickly as you can.
Here's the best advice that I can give you. Put it in your phone right now. It's 480-FH-LAWYER. Put it in there. You'll have that there if you need it, God forbid, or someone that you know. Check them out. It is FountainHillsLawFirm.com. They do free consultations. Put the number in your phone. It's 480-FH-LAWYER.